So welcome everyone to Creating Accessible PowerPoint Presentations. This is being hosted by U of M's Disability Equity Office, or DEO. My name is Jessica McQuaig, and I am a Senior Digital Accessibility Specialist with the office, and I'm going to be leading you through today's training. So just a few logistics before we get started. Please use the Q&A feature today to submit questions that you have. We may have a few opportunities to participate in group questions, and so you can enter comments for those into the chat. We do have ASL interpretation available today, and you can access that by clicking on the interpretation option in your Zoom toolbar, which may be listed under the More option, and then selecting American Sign Language from the interpretation button. We also have CART transcription or live captioning available, which can also be turned on through your Zoom toolbar. And if you look in the chat, we have a link to stream text where you can customize how your captions look and view them in a separate window. Today's workshop is being recorded and it will be posted to the Equity, Civil Rights, and Title IX Office's YouTube channel. And we have that linked in the resources section at the end of the slide deck. This slide deck, it will also be shared in the chat and will be sent via email after the presentation. And when you go to open the slide deck, a note that it is password protected, but can be opened in read-only mode. So when that password window appears, click the read-only button and it will open up just fine. The link to download the practice slides that we'll be using in today's session will also be shared in the chat. You can open those up and try to follow along in real time, but it's really best to only do that if you have a secondary screen. Otherwise, you may wish to hold on to those and try to go in and fix those up on your own time after you've learned the skills to do so. And then finally, after today's session, you will have that follow-up email. It's going to have all of the resources from today, but there will also be a link to an anonymous survey where you can provide feedback on the session. I would really appreciate it if you would fill that out so I know what to keep in this session moving forward and what to change up. Okay, so our agenda today, we are going to be looking at why digital accessibility matters. We'll be talking about elements and tools for PowerPoint accessibility. We'll briefly cover some live presentation tips for accessibility, and then we'll move into a demonstration of remediating a PowerPoint slide deck. And then we'll look at some additional resources briefly, and you'll have more time to peruse those on your own after the session. So we do encourage you to engage today. Please ask questions as we go along. We understand we're teaching some advanced skills in PowerPoint. So if you don't understand something or if you want to know where a tool lives or how to do something, please ask about that. We are all learning together. These tools change all the time. So I am also a continuous learner, and I learn new things. Last week I did a presentation on Microsoft Word, and I learned a new feature just hours before I did the presentation and built it in. So please, if you know something that I don't know, you can also send a message in Q&A or put something into chat. I'd love to know if you're aware of features that I'm not aware of. Okay, so why does this matter? Why are we here today being concerned about digital accessibility in our slide decks? So it's really important that when we're sharing digital information at the university and when we're hosting digital experiences, that we make sure that those can be accessed by, participated in, understood by, and made use of by all. And this applies to websites and applications that we are hosting at the university, the documents, presentations, and spreadsheets that we create, the course content that we put online, our communications and events that we hold online or have resources online for, and much more. So it's important that you all are here today. I appreciate you being here to learn about this with me. And document accessibility matters because it is the right thing to do. So at the university, part of our mission is to challenge the present and enrich the future. And we firmly believe that digital accessibility and accessibility more broadly is a key way to support that mission. Digital accessibility is something that is beneficial to all of us, but it is crucial to individuals with disabilities, as well as those who use assistive technologies to engage with digital content. Digital accessibility also supports our operational objectives. So, approximately 1 in 6 people around the world and 1 in 4 working age individuals in the US live with a disability. And so, if we make sure our things are digitally accessible, what that's going to do is it's going to help us attract and retain talented students and employees that have disabilities. And it's also going to help us reach a larger audience with our programming, research, and educational content at the institution. And then finally, it is the law. So we do have legal obligations, which are outlined under the Americans with Disabilities Act and the Rehabilitation Act. And just recently, the Americans with Disabilities Act was updated to point to very specific technical standards under Title II. So we now have to meet the Web Content Accessibility Guideline Standards Level 2.1 AA, in all of the digital materials that we produce and distribute at the university. So that comes into force on April 24th, 2026. And so it is important that we are all working diligently to try to update our materials and make changes into the future as soon as possible. Okay, so let's dive into elements and tools for PowerPoint accessibility. So the first thing to be aware of in PowerPoint is that you have access to slide templates and themes, and these can be really, really helpful in getting you set up for an accessible start. And then it makes meeting accessibility requirements easier as you populate content in those slides. So today we'll be taking a look at the Slide Master feature in PowerPoint, where you can either choose a pre-developed theme from Microsoft, or you can customize the design to align with your unit's branding. You can insert your unit's logo. It gives you a lot of control over the stylization. So if you can set up those templates accessibly, then when you apply them to your live slides where you're adding content, that can make sure that it is a higher likelihood that the content that you're adding is also accessible. If you're wondering about where to access templates at the university, right now the U of M VP Communications brand office does have presentation templates available. I've linked to them in the slides for you so you can go and take a look. They are stored in something called Michigan Commons, so you can log in with your U of M ID. And then the one thing that I will caution is once you download the templates and go to use them, it is important that you are checking those for accessibility. I know VP Comms is making a lot of efforts around digital accessibility, and things still get missed from time to time. So be sure to do a quality control check before you start adding your own content, and definitely before you distribute anything after you've added content. So there is an image on this slide that shows where you can find the Slide Master function inside of PowerPoint, and we're also going to take a look at that together in real time today during the demo. Okay, so elements to be aware of in your slide deck. Color is really important, so it adds visual interest, and it can be problematic for some folks. So when we are selecting colors for our slide decks, we want to make sure that we are choosing colors that have high contrast in relation to one another. So when we're selecting text colors, we want to make sure that they have high contrast compared to our background colors. If you are using background images, which is typically discouraged but common in slide decks, what we would like to recommend is that you avoid placing text on top of those background images, or if you do, you are altering either the text or the background to make the text really stand out. So you can do things like making the background image darker or making it lighter, adjusting the opacity. You can also fill in the text box around your text to make it stand out a little bit more, and make sure again that you're choosing colors that really differentiate from each other. The problem with putting images in behind text is that images have varied color, and so some colors might be brighter or darker than others, and it's really hard to find a text color that's going to have high enough contrast compared to all of those colors that are a part of that background image. Another thing to note about PowerPoint is that we cannot rely on the built-in accessibility assistant to flag color contrast issues. So when you are checking for color contrast in PowerPoint, what is being checked is the text box content, specifically the text that is inside of that text box and the background fill of that text box. It is not checking that text content against the background of your slide. So that is problematic because oftentimes our text boxes have a transparent background. There is no color. And so it's automatically going to pass that color contrast check because your text color is going to be dark enough against a transparent background no matter what. So please don't use the accessibility assistant for that check. There are some tools on the next slide that you can reference instead. The other thing that we want to make sure that we don't do is relying on color alone to convey meaning. So there are many people in the world that have color vision deficiency, which was previously known as color blindness. And so if you are only using color, that can lose meaning if those colors are not distinguishable to the end user. And so we've got an example on this slide of a pie chart, which is divided into three colored areas. Those colors would I would assume correspond to some sort of legend that indicates what those colors stand for or represent. But if I have color vision deficiency, it might just appear as a series of grayscale colors, and it might be really hard to differentiate between those grays. And so what can be helpful is instead of just using color, adding another piece of information to these images. So in this case, you could add labels like yes, no, and maybe, and put that right on top of the chunks of the pie chart that they correspond to. And then if someone with color vision deficiency views this, they will have the labels as a backup tool to provide the information that's missing from the color. Another option is to add patterns over top of each of the sections that are differentiated, but there needs to be another way, not just color, to differentiate those sections. So on the next slide, we have some color resources that you can check out. So these are things that you can use to check the contrast between colors before you're using them in your slide deck or when you're using them in your slide deck. And there's also some color vision deficiency simulators where you can upload content and images to see what they will look like with different versions of color vision deficiency. And that's most helpful if you do not have a known form of color vision deficiency. And I just want to let people know that it's making a best guess at what it's going to look like for people. We can't assume that that's actually what it looks like when you have CVD. There are also some color swatches that you can access from the U of M brand accessibility webpage, and there are combinations for data visualization that have high enough differentiation and color contrast for your infographics and other data visuals. Okay, so the next thing we want to think about when we're designing our slides is the layout. So there are some rules. The first rule is that you need to give every slide a unique title. So that means it either has to have distinctive text or you have to have things numbered if you're using the same text so that it's clear that there are a series of slides on the same topic, but they are in fact different. That is because assistive technology, when it is giving an overview to the user of what is contained in the slide deck, will use the titles as the announced information, and it can be confusing if multiple slides seem to present the exact same information. It's important to include slide numbers. Assistive technology can access slide number information without there being a visual representation on the slide. However, it's a really helpful tool for sighted individuals to be able to reference a slide number so that they know how far they are into your slide deck. And it's also helpful for following along during a presentation if someone says reference slide 13, like I'm on now. In your layout, it's important to leave white space in between your slide elements, as well as around the edges of the slide. There isn't a defined minimum for how much white space is accessible, so this is really a judgment call. But if your elements are starting to butt right up against each other, you've probably got a problem and things are probably getting a little bit too crowded. That can become really visually overwhelming for people to try to navigate the information. We need to leave white space so that there is visual breathing room on your slides. It's also important to leave some margin space at the bottom of your slides because closed captioning, depending on the service that you're using, may appear actually over top of the slides at the bottom. If you are using ASL interpretation, you also may need to leave room for a picture-in-picture screen of the interpreter to be displayed over top of your slides. And so when you're preparing for presentations, it's important to understand whether or not people can move the captioning and the interpretation window around like you can in Zoom, or whether those are going to be static or stationary, and you need to build space on your slides for those. Another factor to think about with layout is that you should not be using tables to control layout on your slides. These are built for representing tabular data. We'll talk about them a little bit more later. They're not made for design layout purposes. They are going to confuse assistive technology if you've used them for layout purposes. Okay. We also need to be concerned about our text formatting. So we need to make sure that we are selecting easy to read fonts. And we've got some of those on, oh, I need to update my slide numbers. It's going to be on slide 15, the next one. And we also want to make sure that we are maintaining a minimum text size that is consistent across our slides, and also take into account the distance. So how far away from your slide presentation are people going to be physically located? So right now, I know I'm presenting virtually. People are right in front of their screens. People have magnification tools. They can adjust things if they need to. But I didn't use a super huge font because that can feel like it's really up in your face if you're sitting right in front of a screen. If I was in a big auditorium, and the screen that I was presenting on was not very big, I might want to use a larger font size. And something that you may need to do is test that out to make sure that the font is legible to people that are sitting far back in that auditorium, based on the screen size. Use lists as much as possible instead of dense text-heavy paragraphs. It's really difficult with slides to read through dense text. And so finding ways to break that up using things like lists, like different text boxes, etc., can again help people parse the information a little bit more quickly, and reduce the cognitive load of reading through your slide content. Make sure that you're adding space between your paragraphs using built-in spacing functions rather than hard breaks, which can be inserted using like your return or enter key. So the problem with using your enter key to break up your paragraphs is that that's going to be encountered by assistive technology as a blank, and it will be announced as a blank. It can be confusing and frustrating if users are encountering a whole bunch of blanks. Some users may assume that the content has ended and then navigate out of it and go to the next slide and miss things. So by adding in space with the built-in spacing tool, there are no blanks announced, and it just continuously reads through the content that is present on your slides. Again, I'll show you how to do that in today's demo. And then finally, try to limit the amount of text you are putting on each slide. Don't shrink your text size to fit more text, because then it becomes legible to people that are visually engaging with your slides. Instead, try to split your content up across multiple slides if you're noticing them getting really busy and text heavy. Okay, next. Here are some recommendations for accessible fonts. When you're choosing your font, primary things to look out for are characters that are distinct from one another, that have a standard width, height, and spacing between them, letters that are not too thick or too thin, and that's in terms of the lines that make up the letters, and choosing fonts that have few artistic embellishments. So one of the questions I hear a lot is, are serifs okay? Serifs are like the little caps that you'll see on the top of letters and at the bottom, like that make little feet under the letters. Those can be okay if they are subtle. So for instance, Times New Roman is actually a fairly accessible font, because the serifs are subtle. There are fonts that have extremely decorative serifs that have swirls and loops and are oversized. Those are hard to read. So the more embellishment there is on a font, the more energy it's going to take for someone's brain to see the letter or the character and interpret what it is against our standard alphabet that we're familiar with. So we want to choose kind of plain fonts. You can also do a check. And so you can take the similar characters that are listed on this slide and apply the font face that you're interested in to them. and see if they are still visually distinguishable. And so what you want to see is that there are some visual differences between these characters because these are ones that are more challenging to interpret and differentiate, especially for individuals that might have dyslexia or cognitive processing disorders. We want to make sure these are as distinct as possible. Letters like D and B and P and Q are present because these are letters that can be mirrored or flipped depending on the type of cognitive processing issue someone has. So again, we want to try to make sure that those are visually distinguishable too, and not exactly like carbon copies that are flipped of each other. So there are some recommended fonts here. This is not a um, like comprehensive list. There are many others out there that can function really well for people too. So you can start with this and then you can apply these tests to find other fonts that you might like to use in your deck as well. Okay, link formatting. So you might have links in your slide deck, and there are some accessibility features to be aware of. So the first is that your link text should be differentiated from surrounding body text on your slides. So generally, we want to see link text underlined and a different color from the surrounding text. This does help to visually distinguish it, and it is kind of the universal signal to people now that that is a hyperlink that you can engage with and click on. The other thing that we need to be thinking about with our links is that they should be linked to descriptive text. So rather than pasting in a long URL, which is that series of letters and numbers that you would find in your browser bar for the link, we want to have some words that are represented on the screen that describe where that link goes. And then we want to hyperlink the link to that descriptive text. And again, I'll show you how to do that today. But the example that I have up on this slide is read the sample report, and sample report is the link text. And if you click the link, it redirects to a sample report. So the users know where they're going. The important thing here is that assistive technology can browse through content by links. And if they are just encountering long URLs, those get tiresome to listen to, and they don't tell the user where they're going to end up if they engage with the link. The other thing is that if they're just encountering link text that is not descriptive, so things like click here, read more, learn more, if that is listed multiple times, it's not telling the user where they're going. It's not giving them any substantive information about where they'll end up if they engage with the link. And especially in today's day and age with data security and all of those things, we want people to know or have a reasonable idea about where they're going to end up on the internet. If you need to include a URL, so sometimes we do want a URL in there, maybe because people are printing things out, or maybe because we want people to be able to type in a URL on a mobile device to engage in a survey or a poll or something. We would recommend using U of M's URL shortener to reduce the length so that it's a very short URL with just a few characters that people need to type in or listen to. And so I have linked to the shortener on the slide. And if you have a U of M account at the university, you have access to use this. Okay, lists. So when we have lists in our slide deck, they need to follow the same rules as lists in any other document type. So the first is that we need to make sure we are inserting our lists using the built-in function for lists. So there are in the Microsoft environment a bulleted list option and a numbered list option. Bulleted lists are used for unordered list items, and numbered lists are used for lists that need to have like a series of actions where that number is really important, the order is important. When you are adding your lists in, if you want to have sublist items, you should be using the increase indent button or the tab key to be moving the sublist items under and nesting them under the main list items. If you are just manually moving things over using the spacing controls and the tool or the ruler bars in your slide deck, that's not actually going to create a sublist item. It's just going to create the visual look of a sublist item. That's important because assistive technology needs to be able to interpret the structure of lists. It will announce how many list items are present. It will announce whether something is a higher order list item or a nested list item. And that helps people understand the relationship of the items in your list if they can't visually engage with it. The other thing we need to keep in mind is using that line spacing feature to increase the space between our list items rather than using that enter key or return key to add a hard break in. If we add a hard break into our list, we actually break the list into multiple lists. And so every time the assistive technology encounters a new list item, it's going to announce a new list. So it will say list one item. We'll read that item and then it will go down to the next one and say list one item. Very frustrating, very confusing because then assistive tech users don't understand that those list items are supposed to be related to one another. Also important to keep in mind is that your list items should be brief. Paragraphs are not good list items. If you need to write a paragraph, you probably shouldn't have that in a list format. There might be better ways to break that up and distinguish that either by putting them onto separate slides or creating little like headings over top of them or text indicators to break those up visually on the slide. Okay, I'm going to pause there and see if there are any questions that have come in before I move forward to images.
Hi, Jess. This is Erin. Nothing
Yeah.
outstanding right now.
Okay, phenomenal. I'm going to keep going. If you have a question, remember to insert it into Q&A. Okay, so we will also likely have images in our slide decks. There are different types of images. So the first is an informative image. This is an image that is communicating some sort of information to the end user. And so we want to make sure that these are also detectable by individuals that can't visually see your slides. And so to do that, we need to add alternative text, which describes what is in the image to our images. The second kind of image that you might have is a decorative image. This is not usually communicating any important information. It's there more so for aesthetics and layout purposes. And so we want to be marking these images as decorative so that when assistive technology is encountering them, it skips over them and doesn't waste user time announcing things like decorative scroll or bar or like fun bubble element. Like it's often not important that people know those features are there. Now, if you were teaching a design course and you wanted people to understand the elements that you'd put onto your slide, you might want to leave all of those as informative elements and add alt text to all of those things. So again, context matters. Think about your context and think about what you want to be detectable to the end user. In slides, we also have background images. So background images are important because we want these to be added using the slide background feature or the slide master. This is going to make sure that they are not announced by assistive technology and not editable. And the reason for that is that they really shouldn't be communicating too much information to the user. They should be used for decorative purposes. Background images typically need to, again, have some changes made to them so that any text overlaid on them remains accessible. And so if it's not, background images are just, they shouldn't be informative images, is what I'll say. If you want to have a large informative image on your slide, you should leave it on your live layer. Try not to put text over top and add some alternative text to it. So I'm going to show you how to manage background images today. In anything that we're making, we want to avoid things that flicker and flash. GIFs often flicker and flash. This is an image type. If you are including a GIF or graphics interchange format image, you want to limit the loops, the number of times that it plays, to 5 seconds maximum. And you can do this using Easy GIF. The reason for this is that you can actually trigger seizures in individuals that have photosensitive epilepsy, pardon me. Or you can distract individuals. So a number of individuals that are identified as neurodivergent can have challenges with distractibility. And if something's moving around on the screen constantly, it's going to be really hard for them to focus in on anything else that's going on. So limit those loops. And then finally, avoid graphics that replace true characters. Things like bullets, letters, or punctuation should be made using true characters or font. If you replace it with an image, assistive technology is not going to understand that that is your intention. It's not going to understand the function and the role. So avoid doing that wherever you can. We have some rules for adding alt text to images. So ideally, your alt text should be brief unless your image is conveying complex information. If it is, you may choose to add a longer description on the slide with the image, or you might want to link out to a longer description in a separate document. Alt text needs to reflect the essential content and image purpose. and it shouldn't repeat information that is in the accompanying body text with the image. So they should be distinct from one another. It should reference any and all text that is included in the image. So if there's writing in the image, you need to have that in your alt text. If there is color that is inside of your image that is communicating some sort of information, include that because that can, even for individuals that may not have color as a visual reference point currently, color does mean things to people. So if we say it was a blue sky day versus a gray sky day, that communicates something about the weather. Even people that are not sighted are going to have those reference points and understand that communication. And indicate if your image is a special type of image. So we don't want to say image or picture of because assistive tech is already going to announce that before it reads out the alt text. But we do want to note if it is a special type of image like a table, a chart, a graph, a portrait, etc., because that does, again, communicate some valuable information to the end user. If your image that you have on your slide is functioning as a button or a link to somewhere else, what your alt text should be communicating is where that link is going to take the user rather than what that button looks like. So that's just a differentiation to be aware of. Tables. So again, in our slides, tables should not be used for layout purposes. There are other functions we can use for that, like text boxes and columns. If you add a table, it does need to have a defined header row. I'll show you how to do that today. And you need to make sure that your table does not contain blank, merged, or split cells. These are problematic for assistive technology users. This is because if a user encounters a blank cell, they may question whether there was supposed to be data there and their assistive technology just isn't reading it properly, or they may think that they've reached the end of the table, or their assistive technology could get trapped in that blank cell. So blank cells can be difficult and problematic. You should always add a value into your cells, even if it's something like NA for not applicable or empty cell, or if you want people to insert data into those cells, you could say insert X here, whatever data you want them to put in. For merged and split cells, these become problematic because they break the natural structure of the table, which assistive technology relies upon to communicate the relationship between the data contained within cells. So when assistive technology is trying to navigate, it can get confused. It can move through the cells in the incorrect way, and it may not be announcing the relationships properly. So avoid merged and split cells because, again, they're going to be a problem for assistive tech. You should also make sure that you're not inserting tables inside of tables. Again, that gets really messy. It breaks the structure. We don't want to confuse assistive tech users. It's important to understand that tables in PowerPoint are going to be fundamentally less accessible than tables in Word and Excel. So use them sparingly and make sure that they are not complex. If you need to include some sort of complex table in your presentation, it might be better to include an image with a link out to a more accessible version of that table information for those that actually want to be able to go through the data. And then an optional thing to do with tables is to visually stylize them to make them easier to visually parse the information. And you can do that by doing things like adding alternating color rows that help our brains move from one row to the other more cleanly. Okay. And then this is one of the last two things. So we want to make sure that we are defining a language for our slide deck. And the nice thing about PowerPoint is it allows you to assign a language for either the whole presentation, by slide, or for portions of selected text. So I'll show you how to do that today. And we need to make sure that we are setting a presentation title in the file properties. The title is the thing that will be announced as assistive technology is switching between windows on a computer. So instead of reading out the file name for your file, it will read out the title associated with that file, which often should be more meaningful than a file name, which can be a little bit messy and include a lot of nonsense characters. We also need to make sure that we are setting the reading order for the content on our slides. So I'm going to show you how to check the reading order today, but this essentially makes sure that assistive technology is going to read through the content in a logical manner and the way that you would expect sighted individuals to parse through and read the information as well. Once you're done putting together your slide deck, we do encourage you to check your work and also set access controls if you need to. So we've put together a presentation checklist that you can use with instructions to help move through the steps for checking your deck and making any corrections that are needed. And we've got a link to learn more about the accessibility assistant built into PowerPoint that I will be sharing today. And we've got some information about some of the errors and limitations that you might encounter with that tool. So this is your warning. This is the caveat. The accessibility assistant is not perfect. It is a helper, but you need to be aware of the fundamental pieces that you need for your accessible slides and be applying those proactively. The accessibility assistant is really just like a quality check, and it does have a couple of features built in that can proactively assist you, and we'll learn about those today. Okay. And then access controls. So what we recommend is that if you want to limit access to either editing or viewing your slides, that you are using the password protection feature in PowerPoint rather than exporting your slides to a PDF. If you export them to a PDF, you are almost guaranteed to lose a lot of the accessibility work that you've applied in PowerPoint, and you would then need to go and remediate your slides in Acrobat, which is really complicated and much more time consuming. So it's much easier to just save a protected PowerPoint version and distribute that rather than converting to PDF. So in the speaker notes on the slide deck that you will receive, there are instructions for how to go through and password protect your files so that they can be opened as read only, or they could require a password to open and modify. And then finally, some live presentation tips before we move into our demo. So when you are presenting live, it is important to read or paraphrase all of the text content that is on your slide, as well as describe your on-screen visuals. This is because we don't know who's in the audience. We don't know how much they can detect on the slides, if anything, visually. So they might be relying on our verbal descriptions to follow along with the presentation. If you are planning to play any media content, so video or audio, it's important to describe what people will view or hear before you play it. Again, because we don't know that people can actually visually engage with what we're about to play or that they can audibly engage with what we're about to play. So describe it so that they understand what's coming. For in-person presentations, we want to make sure that we're testing our volume so we're not blasting people out of the room with the sound. And in virtual presentations, sometimes the volume of media plays louder than the presenter's voice. And so it can be important to prompt individuals that you're about to play something and ask them to adjust their volume down and then back up after the media starts playing so that the volume is at a comfortable level for them. And where possible, share your materials in advance. This can be especially heavy if you're giving, or especially important if you're giving a heavy, dense presentation. It allows people to process the information a little bit in advance before they have access to you, the expert. Okay, and we're going to move into our demonstration now. So you should have access to the link to the demo deck in the chat. And I'm going to move over and open up my demo deck, which you should all be able to see on the screen now. Okay, so we are viewing slide one. Make this a little bit bigger. So in slide one, there are a few things that we need to fix up to meet our best practices. So the first is we have a background image here, and right now it is just floating wild and free in the editable layer of our slide. We want to actually add this as a true background image. I don't really feel that it's important that assistive technology users know there's a building in the background with some flowers. It's really for aesthetic purposes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add this as a background image. With the image selected, and this is pulling from my slide deck, I'm going to copy the image. So I'm going to right click and I'm going to select copy. And then I'm going to go and I'm going to open up my slide master. So the slide master you can find in your view toolbar ribbon, and it will be listed as slide master. When I click this, I'm going to have a new ribbon open up called the slide master ribbon. And here I can make some adjustments to my slides. So the first thing that I want to do is to make this a background image is I can go to my template that I had applied to that slide that was just live, and it's this one, it's my title slide. And I can click on the slide and I can paste in my image. And now it is a part of this slide and it will be a part of the master in the background. I can also go to background styles and format background from my toolbar ribbon. And here I can add in a picture fill. And this is really nice because it will keep all of the other live elements in front of my image on the slide and make sure that it will not move around as I'm editing other elements of the slide master. So I prefer this method. So once I've selected picture or texture fill, I can either insert an image from my documents on my computer, or I can select the clipboard function and it's going to paste in the last thing that I copied to my clipboard, which is the image that I had on my live slide. So it's now added a nice background image here, and I can close this out. And if I exit my slide master, what I will see here is I have the active image, but in behind I have a background image as well. So this is one way to do that. There is another way to do it, which is through your design tab. So if I copy this image and I go to the design ribbon, there's also an option to format the background here from the live slides. But I do encourage you to get comfortable working in the slide master view. Okay, so I'm going to delete this live image. And now I've got the background image added and I can't click and move that around. Next, we want to adjust our title styling because it has terrible color contrast compared to the background image. So there are a couple of ways I might want to go about this, but I want to select the text and I want to make some revisions to the text, and I can do that through my home toolbar ribbon, going to the font menu, and then I can do things like adjust the color. So maybe I want to try to color this white. And I see the white does stand out a little bit more, but there's still some light parts of this image that I'm a little bit concerned about. So what might be wiser is for me to actually add a fill in behind the text. So to do this, I'm going to undo that change. I'm going to select my text box and I'm going to go into the shape format ribbon in my upper toolbar. And here I can actually adjust the fill of my shape. So I can either go into my predetermined designs panel and scroll through until I find one that I think might look good and apply that. Or I can go in manually and change my shape fill and the outline around the text box so you can manually stylize this how you want. But once I've made those changes, it's a lot easier now to read my text over this background image, and the background image colors are not interfering with the contrast of my letters. So that's the second change I'd want to make on this slide. The next piece of data that I want to add to my slides here is a slide number. And again, this can help with navigation visually. So there are a couple ways to do this, but there's kind of a fundamental thing that you need to make sure is turned on, and you're going to find that through your slide master. So start in your slide master. Again, we are going to go to View and access our slide master from the View toolbar ribbon. In the View toolbar ribbon, I want to go to the very first slide over in the left-hand side panel and make sure that I've selected that. Then I'm going to go to the Master Layout drop-down menu, and I need to actually turn on page numbers. If I haven't turned on this feature and I try to add page numbers in the editing environment, they will not show up. So you need to do this step first. So I'm going to enable page numbers, and then I'll see that the page number appears in the footer area of this master slide. I then need to go and apply this change to each of my slide templates where I want to have a slide number. So I'm going to select each template. I'm going to go to that master layout dropdown, and I'm going to turn on the footer elements that I've enabled. So I'm going to turn it on there, turn it on there, and turn it on there. Now I may want to make some edits. So I might want to move my number over so that it's sitting in a slightly different location. I also might want to do something like update the color, and I can select the number placeholder and go into my home toolbar ribbon and change the color if I want to. So once I'm happy with how things look over in my slide master environment, and I'm going to make this one white so we can see it really nicely, I can exit out of my slide master and I'm going to go back to my slides. And Where have my page numbers gone? They're there. Don't worry. We just need to turn them on in the live editing environment. So to turn them on in the live editing environment, we are going to go to the Insert Toolbar ribbon. And then we are going to go to, there's a tiny little image over here. This is our Insert Slide Number function. I'm going to click this. It's going to open up our header and footer dialog box, where under the Slide tab, we can turn on slide numbers. We can indicate which slide number we want our numbering to start at. I've left it at 1 because that makes sense to me. We can control whether or not we want a number to appear on our title slide. I would like a number on my title slide. And then we can either apply the numbers to just the slide that we have open and selected, or we can apply them to all. I would like to apply them to all. So I'm going to select that, and then our numbers will appear on all of our templates where we have turned on the page number function. So you'll see that the styling is going to match up to what the template is. So if you're not happy with how your numbers look, you need to go back into your slide master and adapt your templates to appear how you want them to. Okay, so I'm pretty happy with how our title slide looks. Let's move on to slide 2. So on slide 2, we have a pretty glaring miss right up at the top, which is I have no title field in this slide. Again, the titles are useful for browsing. The easiest way to add in a true slide title is through the accessibility assistant. If I just draw a text box on here and write in some words and style it to look like a title, assistive technology is not going to actually reference that as a title. It's just going to be some body text. So I need to make sure that I'm adding a text field that is labeled for title content. So I'm going to go to my accessibility assistant, which is located in the review toolbar ribbon. And I'm going to click on my check accessibility button. It's going to open up the accessibility assistant pane on the right-hand side of the screen. And I need to scroll down and find the document structure section. And I'm going to see right here that I am missing slide titles, which is, yes, evident. So I'm going to click on this feature, and it is going to prompt me to review slides where I have no slide title defined. And surprise, surprise, I actually made a mistake on my title slide, and it turns out that this text is not a title at all. And so I do want to make sure that I set this as the slide title. So with that All About Squirrels selected, I'm going to click Set as Slide Title. It's now going to find that as the title, and it's going to clear that error on that slide. It's now taking me to slide 2, where I'm also missing a title, and it's asking if I want the page number to be the slide title. I do not want the page number to be the slide title, so instead I either need to add a visible slide title or add a hidden slide title. So a hidden slide title will still be functionally there in the background, but will not appear on your slide. And this is really helpful if you're going for like a clean aesthetic look, but you still want it to be accessible to assistive technology users. I want to have a visual slide title. So I'm going to select Add Slide Title. It's going to add the field in here, and I'm going to add a title in, and this is going to be Squirrel, Species, and Diets. All right, and when I'm done and happy with that, I'll click away. And now I have no missing slide titles. So thank you, Accessibility Assistant. The next thing that I need to fix is my lists. So I have 2 lists on this slide and they're running right out of the text box. So we're going to fix that too. But right now, these are not true lists. So I can tell because if I go into my home toolbar ribbon and open up my paragraph menu, I cannot see that there is one of the list functions selected. So it should be grayed out if this is a true list. What's actually happened is I've manually added dashes in here with some words. This is not going to be read as a list. So let's select all of these items and approve or apply true list formatting. Once that's been applied, I can go in and remove all of the extra dashes in here. I've now got these nice little bullet points. Perfect. And I can do the same thing for my list that I have down below because this is also not a true list. Like that. That is not part of my list. Remove that. Okay, perfect. So I've applied list formatting to both of these. In my first list, I have another problem, and that is that I have a hard break in between two list items. As we learned earlier, this is going to make it so that the first list is read as having two main level list items, and then it's going to announce a second list that just has one item in it, which is acorns. I need to remove this hard break to make sure that it's read as a consistent list, a comprehensive list. There's also another blank in between the start of the next list label, so I'm going to remove that as well. And what I want to do instead is I want to apply spacing between my list items using the spacing function, which I can again find in the Home Toolbar ribbon under the paragraph menu and then under the the line spacing menu. So I want to go into line spacing options where I can define my own spacing. And right now it's set to have 10 points before each of the list items and nothing afterwards. So maybe I want to edit this a little bit. Maybe I want 5 before and I want to have 10 after, and I want to have single spacing between the lines. I'm going to hit OK. And that's visually going to stylize that with consistent spacing between my items and none of those hard breaks. So the other challenge I have on this slide is I've got text running right outside of the text box. This is not good visually. If I'm in screen share mode, this is going to just run off the slide and not be visible. What I want to do here is I either need to add a second text box over here and copy paste this content into it, or I can use the columns feature for text box in in PowerPoint. So I'm going to select my text box and I'm going to go into the paragraph menu in my home toolbar ribbon, and there is a columns drop-down menu. If I open this up, I can define two columns for this text box, and it's going to then split my text up into those two columns, and it will flow nicely and fit inside the box. And then to make sure that I've got the text aligned where I want it to, I'm just going to resize my text box so that it's all fitting nicely together and structured beautifully. Okay, let's move on to slide 3. We're doing okay. We're going to get through this, folks. Okay. So on this next slide, we have to work with images. And so we have an informative image on this slide. We also have a decorative image. So the decorative image might not be super apparent, but it is this little underline bar that I've added underneath Nutty Facts to make you appreciate squirrels. This I want to mark as decorative. In order to do that, I want to go into my upper toolbar ribbon and open up my shape format menu and then select the alt text function, and that will open up my alt text pane on the right. I can also right click with the item selected, and then from the menu that opens up, select view alt text from there, and it will open the same pane. So when this opens up, there are two options. I can either add an alt text description or I can mark the object as decorative. I want to mark this as decorative. So I'm going to do that. It's going to gray out the alt text and says it will not be detectable by assistive technology now, which is what I wanted. But I also have this informative image, which is a cute squirrel lying on a branch. So in this case, I'm going to, hold on, just click away, make sure I got the image selected. Okay, so I do want to add alt text here for this image. And usually, I'm going to reopen my window. Okay, usually there's an AI option. It's not showing up right now. I'm not sure why it's not showing up, but I'm going to input an alt text description here. Squirrel lying on a branch. And then when I close this window, the alt text will be applied to this image. Now, in your version of PowerPoint, and it was showing up for me this morning, you might see an option to have AI generate alt text for you. If you're using that option, make sure that you either review and edit the text in the text window or that you toggle on the approve alt text button, because that's going to inform PowerPoint that you have actually manually reviewed the text to make sure that it is accurate, and it will remove the warning for assistive technology that the alt text was generated by AI. So that's really important. Okay, so I've added alt text to this image. I've marked this item as decorative. The other piece that I want to fix on this slide is I have a long URL, which is not very accessible. So I'm going to make this a descriptive link instead. I'm going to highlight the URL. I'm going to go into my Insert toolbar ribbon, and I have a links drop-down menu. I'm going to select a link from it. and it's going to open up the Edit Hyperlink dialog box. My address goes into the address bar, but up above there is a text to display field. This is where I want to enter my descriptive text. And this is linking out to an article with 22 facts about squirrels. So I'm going to put in the title of the article here, and then I'm going to hit OK. And it is going to update my link so that it is now displaying descriptive text instead of that long URL. The last thing I'm going to show you on this slide is how to adjust the reading order. So there are two ways to check your reading order. The first is to use the keyboard tab test. So on your keyboard with the slide in focus, you can hit tab and it's going to move through the content in the order that assistive technology will. And right now I can see that it's moving through in a strange order and I want to fix that up. You used to have to move things forward and backward to get them into the right order. But now PowerPoint offers this really great reading order pane, which is available through the accessibility options. So if you go into your review ribbon, check accessibility, there's a drop-down menu, and you can open up the reading order pane. And what this reading order pane allows you to do is select the items and then drag and drop them into the order that you want them read. So I'm going to move things around. I want that to be read almost last. The picture to be read just in front of it. So you can drag and drop until you see things in the order, if you're clicking through, that you want assistive technology to read through. So I've corrected the reading order, which is great. The accessibility assistant may or may not flag reading order issues. Okay, we're moving to our last slide. So on this slide, we have an issue with our title, and that is that it is not unique. We have a slide right before it with the same title. So we need to differentiate this somehow. I could change the slide title or I could add a number beside it. So I might want to go back to the first slide and add Fix Accessibility Issues 1. And then on the second slide, have it Fix Accessibility Issues 2. They are now both unique. I also need to fix up my table here. So clicking into my table, I need to define the header row. So I want to make sure my table is selected, and then I want to open up the table design ribbon. And in the table design ribbon, I want to select that header row content, and I'm going to click header row, and I'm going to check off the box in the toolbar ribbon that says header row. That helps to define this as the header row in the table for assistive technology, and that's the only way to do it in PowerPoint, unfortunately. And then the other problem I have with this table is I have some merged cells here. So North America is merged into one cell, and it's not going to correspond properly to the preceding cells and data. So I need to split this back up so that it's in 3 rows. So I can do that using my table layout ribbon. And with my cursor inside of that cell, I need to use the split cell function. So this is going to be collapsed right now. So if I use my merge dropdown, I can select split cells. It's going to open up the split cells dialog, and I need to be able to split this. It's 1 column, but I need it to have 3 rows. So I'm going to change that, click insert, and then it will split my cell nicely so that it corresponds well to the cell data after it. And then I'm going to have to make sure I don't have blank cells. I'm going to populate North America in each of these cells. And now I've got a complete table that will be accessible. Last 2 steps, I need to set my document language. I can do that in my review tab using the language tool. And I can either set it by slide or document. I want to set it for the whole document. I'm going to scroll down and select English, United States, and click OK. I can also define text in a different language in the document by highlighting it, going into language, and then applying the text directly. Okay, and then to add a file title, we are going to use our top level PowerPoint drop-down menu. We're going to go to File, Properties. In the Properties dialog, we'll go to the Summary tab and enter a title. And so this will be Demo Slide Deck. And then I'll hit OK. And that will be the title affiliated with this document. So I know we're right at 12. We just wrapped up the demo. I'm going to close this out and quickly open up my main PowerPoint slides. So in the slide deck, You will have access to some additional resources. So there's additional resources for slide accessibility, for getting started with digital accessibility, and planning your digital accessibility strategy. We also have information about resources available through the Disability Equity Office, including upcoming trainings, how to request support for accommodations or consultations, how to how to request training, and how to report barriers to accessibility. There's also an option to voluntarily self-ID as having a disability. This is not shared with your supervisor or disclosed. This is for percentage purposes so that we understand how many individuals at the university we have with disabilities and can advocate for sufficient resources to support our community. And then there's more learning opportunities. So thank you. I think we're 1 minute over time. I appreciate everyone being here. If you have any questions that were not answered, we will send out a Q&A file that will have all of the questions answered to everyone after this presentation. Thank you, everyone.